Hi there, and thanks for joining us on Chicago Tonight, Black Voices. I'm Brandis Friedman. On the show tonight, addressing the needs of black veterans struggling with mental health issues. The healing power of artwork made by a Chicago Vietnam War veteran you won't soon forget. A new book about the many faces of fraud is this month's Black Voices Book Club selection. How a local woman with celiac disease is helping others who can't eat gluten dine out safely.
Taking basketball rims down does not make your neighborhood safer, but putting them back up can be the start to building community.
And Jamal Cole offers the last word on why he says bringing basketball back to the parks will help make Chicago's streets safer. All that coming up, but our first story tonight, keeping black vets healthy physically and mentally. That's right after this.
Chicago Tonight, Black Voices is made possible in part by Fifth Third Bank and by the support of these donors.
At Fifth Third, we believe when diverse voices are heard and empowered, communities are made stronger, lives are made better, and the future holds greater promise for all. That's why we're proud to support Chicago Tonight Black Voices. Together, we can make a difference. Together, we can drive change.
Organizations are helping black veterans with mental health issues get the help they need. The Department of Veterans Affairs found black veterans may be more likely to develop post-traumatic stress disorder than their white counterparts. However, an internal VA report shows black veterans were more often denied benefits for PTSD. Joining us now are Walida Bennett, founder and director of the Multi-Faith Veterans Initiative, and Manny Johnson, chairman of the Black Veterans Coalition. Thanks to you both for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Walida, let's start with you, please. What led you to start the Multi-Faith Veterans Initiative?
I lost my son to suicide, who was a vet. And at the time, I asked the question, well, where's the community and what are they doing? And because I felt that when veterans come back, they come back to the communities that they left, but veterans are also invisible. So we don't know who they are in the communities. And so what I wanted to do was to create a space within the community that could help them navigate their transition, have a safe space for them to join, and also connect them to needed resources. And that's why we started.
And of course, we're sorry to hear the loss of your son. Remind us his name, please.
His name is Saad Muhammad, and it's been 10 years.
And he served some years in the military.
Some years in the military. He was honorably discharged. He was Special Forces, so that compounded. He got out, he worked for intelligence, and so carrying, what you see and can't be unseen. What you've done cannot be undone. And so when you talk about the VA and post-traumatic stress, while yes, that is there, but what we don't talk about is the moral injury. That is what many veterans carry, and that oftentimes is what leads them to take their own lives.
Manny, you served in the Navy as an information systems technician for 6.5 years. What are some of the mental health challenges that black veterans face?
Well, I think the biggest thing is we talk about recruitment, but we don't know where a lot of the folks are coming from. So a lot of folks aren't coming from the inner city. So when African-American veterans join the service, there's already a culture shock with it being the military, but also a lot of folks don't look like them and aren't from the same places that they come from. So the biggest benefit for me was just having other black sailors pull me to the side that had been there for a while, a lot of them from Chicago, to say, hey, stay away from this or help them navigate things in this way.
Walida, how does your organization help connect vets, especially black vets, to the mental health services they need?
Well, what we've been able to do over 10 years is develop about 14 community hubs, what we call community hubs, that spans about 18 communities. What we do is we connect an environmental scan to find out where those resources are that are in the community that can connect those veterans to the services that they need. So when they come into those community spaces, each of our community sites has access to the environmental scan, and they can connect them with the needed services that they need. We also recommend the vet centers, because the vet centers will service veterans irrespective of their discharge status. All veterans do not, some don't want to go to the VA, some of them cannot, given their discharge status.
Manny, what experiences have you heard from black vets when they're trying to access mental health services through the VA?
Well, one of the most traumatic stories that I heard was There was a veteran who's a veteran of Special Forces as well, who was seeking mental health services and seeking compensation from the VA. And the VA tried to connect their post-traumatic stress to their time in Chicago growing up versus their time in the military when they served on the front lines. So those are some of the, as you mentioned before in that data, those are some of the barriers that African-American veterans are experiencing. And a lot of times it's difficult to sit across with somebody who doesn't understand your experiences prior to the service, as well as your experiences as an African-American service member in the service, and try to talk to them about the disability claims that you have. That's one of the reasons why we're starting the VSO Corps nationally, but we have 14 trained here in Cook County to give black veterans the opportunity to get their benefits by sitting across from another black service member.
So it sounds like an absence of sort of culturally specific and culturally relevant services and providers.
Yes.
Walida, your organization also focuses on the specific issues that female veterans face. What can you tell us about that?
Well, female veterans, many of them that we have been engaged with suffer from post-traumatic stress. We talked to one female veteran recently whose husband basically killed her child. The other issues that we see with female veterans when they come back is really reconnecting with their children, particularly if they have children before. We had one female vet who was never able to reconnect with their children. We were able to successfully get her into the VA to get some services, and she died on the operating table. When they had her services, none of her children were there. And so this becomes a huge issue when you think about how we service female vets. When we talk about women veterans, although the VA is doing much better in terms of servicing, but there was a time when the women's clinic was in the basement. And as they're walking through catcalls.
Oh, geez.
And they go to the VA, and they're not recognized as the vet. They're asked, well, who's your spouse?
Where's the bathroom?
No, who's your
Or
spouse?
who's your spouse? Some heartbreaking stories there. And before we run out of time, Manny, what do you think should be done? What more can be done to support black veterans struggling with mental health issues?
Well, I think we have to place services where they reside. Like one of the things Walida talked about, she works on, is working with faith-based organizations. A lot of folks' faith was their primary source of energy and strength prior to service. So if we're not training the faith-based institutions to work with veterans, we're doing them disservice, as well as the community services, right? So a lot of times when white veterans return home to their neighborhoods, there's parades and things of that nature. A lot of times we return home to our communities, folks don't know what to do with us, right? So working with more predominantly black organizations to get them to understand how to work with the veterans who are already in their communities. And I think a bigger point to lay out is for community organizations that if you asking folks if they are veterans, there are a host of services that exist either through the nonprofit space, but also at the VA that will help change those outcomes. So we know our social service systems are already overburdened, but if we're asking folks in those application processes, have they served in the military, there could be a whole host of resources that can help them as well.
Okay, that's where we'll have to leave it. Manny Johnson, thank you for your service. Walida Bennett, thank you for the work that you do, and thanks to you both for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
In 1968, a U.S. Marine was wounded and evacuated from Vietnam. He returned to Chicago and found his calling making artwork in a way that might be called obsessive. Charles Smith now lives in Louisiana, and he continues to create. Producer Mark Vitale met him on a recent visit back to the city to open a show at the National Veterans Art Museum. Please be warned, there is a description of violence in the story that may be upsetting.
The basic purpose of the art is to guide the focus and attention to the African American experience so that the world will know the understanding of us as a people from its very early beginning. And that is why the pieces tell the story of a period and time captured in art.
Dr. Charles Smith gave himself the title Doctor to honor a lifetime of experience and knowledge. He's made thousands of these figures from a blend of concrete, wood pulp, and rebar. In the 1990s, his home in Aurora, Illinois became a roadside attraction, and he now runs a heritage museum near New Orleans. "Call me Doc," he said, and told us about his life before he was an artist. Be forewarned, his description of war is harrowing.
And in my life in 1968, when I came home from Vietnam, heavily usage of drugs and marijuana primarily to stay stable and very much full of hate for the killing I did of families, women, children, water buffalo, North Vietnamese, BC, anything that didn't have USMC on them, I was killing them. And you feel it in your heart, and you feel the change and the hate taking over you, and after a while you get accustomed to it. That's why they call it PTSD. It don't bother you now, but as you get older and as you come out, it bothers you. I'm under VA care right now for post-traumatic stress and situations of that war, and you never get over it.
He is vocal about what he hasn't seen over the years in terms of political change and leadership.
I'm 82 now, and nothing has changed. Our representatives don't talk to us. They don't include us. They don't come and ask our opinion. What are our major needs? And all I know about a leader is Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, Frederick Douglass, and Ida B. Wells, and those people of the past. But today's leader has failed that leadership, and they don't measure up.
Years ago, Smith was a pastor in Tennessee. He no longer ministers at church, but he hasn't stopped preaching.
The calling comes from God because God has always been a part of my life, and God worked with me so, put that art in my heart and say, that's the platform you use. So that's what my art does. It creates conversation, it gives information, and it gives directions in terms on where we need to be at every level, politically, spiritually, personally, community, and that type of a thing. The message must continue to go out. It must continue to pound on what's wrong. I pound on organizations, schools, principles. I'm like the radio. If you don't change the channel or cut it off, I'm going to keep going.
For Chicago Tonight, Black Voices, this is Mark Vitale.
He's going to keep going. The exhibition is called Dr. Charles Smith, Holding the Dream in My Hand. It's at the National Veterans Art Museum until June 1st, a few more days. And there's more on our website, including the artist's account of meeting Dr. Martin Luther King in Chicago. And we're back with more Chicago Tonight, Black Voices, right after this. Kelly Richmond Pope's life is all about fraud. In addition to teaching forensic accounting at DePaul University, she also produced and directed a documentary about Rita Crundwell, the woman who defrauded Dixon, Illinois, out of $54 million in the largest municipal fraud in U.S. history. And in this month's Black Voices Book Club selection, she wants to teach you about fraud in Fool Me Once, Scams, Stories, and Secrets from the Trillion-Dollar Fraud Industry. Richmond Pope explores the many forms fraud can take and the sometimes surprising stories of the people who perpetrate it. And Kelly Richmond Pope joins us now to talk all about it. Welcome to Chicago Tonight, Black Voices.
Thank you for having me.
So in the book, you break these stories of a variety of fraud into categories of fraudster. Walk us through some of those categories, please.
Sure. So I wanted to look at all the different faces of fraud. So when we talk about perpetrators, there's different types. Everyone doesn't steal for greed. So everyone's not your Bernard Madoff of the world. So you can be an intentional perpetrator, which you probably are not. You could be an accidental perpetrator, which you might make a mistake and find yourself embedded in a fraud. Or you could be a righteous perpetrator. And so all of those are the different profiles. And I wanted to offer a new way of thinking about a perpetrator because everyone doesn't steal for money.
You open your book with the story of Rita Crundwell, though, who defrauded Dixon, Illinois out of $54 million, as we mentioned. And in fact, the last time you joined us here was to talk about the documentary that you directed about her. But you also include stories of, that people might not think of as fraud, like retail return fraud. What are you hoping folks take away with this broad approach?
So you're right. I opened the book with Rita. I think when I pass on my headstone, it's going to say wife, mother, friend, Rita Crundwell, and all the Queen's horses. That's going to be there. But Rita's story really inspired the book, and so that you'll read that throughout the book. And she's an intentional perpetrator. But what I wanted people to understand is we all can rationalize things that we want. Now, read or rationalize on a much larger scale. But if you are at work and you need to make some photocopies for your kid's birthday and you just use the copier machine, or you decide that you're going on vacation to a conference and you're going to take all your friends and they're going to stay in your hotel room, or you don't even go to the conference. You register and you don't even show up. Those are forms of fraud too. So this idea that this is them, I wanted to change that narrative. I wanted people to realize this is us. We all can rationalize things that we want.
But clearly, at some point, it gets away.
It can get away.
The train gets off the tracks.
It can get off the track. And in the book, I talk about a lot of personal stories. So I had an experience where a retailer sent me a purse that I purchased, and then the next day, they sent me a second purse. And I was like, I got an extra bag here. So I
bonus
thought,
bag.
Bonus bag. So I said to one of my friends, you know, the company sent 2 bags. And I was thinking she would say, send it back. That's awful. What she said was, you should sell it. Sell it on eBay. Get your money. And I'm like, wait a minute. So I did a little survey and started asking people, what would you do? And everyone said, it's not your fault. They sent it back. Sell it. So these little small missteps can grow and grow and grow. And so when you think about Rita's case, it didn't start off where she stole $53.7 million. It started off small. It might have been a bag that she got and she decided to keep it. Who knows? But that's what I want people to realize, is that we all make these, we're presented with these ethical dilemmas. Now, a lot of us don't take. A lot of us do tell and send the bag back, but a lot of us just don't get caught doing things.
So another story that Chicagoans will be familiar with is, of course, that of Jackie Robinson West, the baseball team, Southside Little League team that was stripped of the championship title for having some ineligible players on the team in 2015. And you recalled your class's reaction to hearing from the whistleblower in that incident. Tell us about that.
Sure. So in the book, just like I talk about perpetrators, I talk about whistleblowers. Now, whistleblowers is a loaded word because a lot of times, if I say whistleblower, your reaction you might say snitch, rat, tattletale, traitor, somebody that's not trustworthy. So just like I did with the perpetrators, I wanted to create whistleblower categories. So you could be an accidental whistleblower, you could be a noble whistleblower, or you could be a vigilante whistleblower. Now, vigilante whistleblowers are those people that just don't mind their own business, but we need them because they are the ones that you might think are snitches and tattletales, but you want someone that knows the rules, that knows when someone around you gets out of line. So when I think about that class period where I had the whistleblower come to class, my students half of them hated the whistleblower, and the other half really could empathize with him. And he was more of a noble whistleblower. So he spoke out, and he knew that there were teams that didn't follow the rules. And he knew it, and he felt like someone needs to say something. Now, was he wrong for saying something? Not really. But he did, and when he did, people attacked him. So it was an interesting class to see how some people really were supportive of him, but other people were just angry about his actions.
So we've got about 20 seconds left. What would you say your average person can do to protect themselves against fraud?
Follow your gut. You know, make sure that's the first thing. If there's smoke, there's fire. And so just follow your gut and take the time to read, take the time to just, if you're an organization, ask questions. If you're an organization, make sure all the internal controls that you have work, because there is someone in your organization that's probably thinking about how to defraud you.
Oh, wow. Okay, Kelly Richmond Pope, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And once again, the book is Fool Me Once, Scams, Stories, and Secrets from the Trillion-Dollar Fraud Industry. And you can read an excerpt on our website. Up next, keeping diners with special diets safe. The autoimmune condition celiac disease causes damage to the intestinal tract when foods containing gluten are eaten. Celiac is currently known to affect about 1% of the world's population, and only a small fraction of those diagnosed are black. But research suggests many more black Americans could be affected. Chessa Rollins says when she was diagnosed with celiac disease, dining out became a dangerous gamble. So she decided to cook up a solution herself. Producer Erica Gunderson met up with a chef who's booting gluten from her kitchen.
I didn't go to school to be a chef. I was like, I just like to cook. And then I was like, I'm hungry. So then it was like, how do you make that mix?
Chef Cheza Rollins' recipe for restaurant ownership began with an unusual ingredient, a diagnosis.
I was diagnosed with celiac disease. I found out when I was 3 months pregnant, and I went to 6 or 7 different specialists. And at that time, I started to lose hearing in my right ear. I was losing my hair. My vision was becoming blurry. Once you're pregnant and you have these gluten allergies, the symptoms are escalated. And no one could tell me what was wrong with me. In the African American community, it wasn't prevalent. It wasn't a prevalent diagnosis. So there was no one I could turn to say, hey, I need help. And so for me, it was just a journey of exploring, what to do and what not to do.
Rollins says after facing a lack of dietary advice from her doctors, she decided to blaze her own trail.
I wanted to really see what would happen if I started a gluten-free food truck.
The menu at Cheza's gluten-free food truck, which she opened in 2016, leaned towards street food like wings and tacos. When she opened her dine-in spot in Avondale earlier this year, she rolled out a new menu that includes foods you might not expect to find gluten-free versions of.
I wanted to test out something new called Southern Twang. And Southern Twang just had a spin on, soul food, Cajun, Creole style food. So, the fried chicken, the fried catfish, the fried lobster. So I tried out, rice flour, potato flour, anything that you could possibly think of that was gluten-free, and to see how people responded to it.
Now I know what everyone talks about when they're like, I love chicken and waffles.
Because the kitchen at Cheza's Bistro and Bar is entirely gluten-free, Rollins says customers with severe allergies can dine without worrying about cross-contamination.
I'm happy that people are finding me and relieved. People are crying. I haven't had fried chicken in 10 years. I haven't had mac and cheese in, so long. But they're like, oh my God, I can eat anything. I can not have to worry about, if I'm gonna have an allergic reaction. A lot of places where they'll have gluten-free options, but they don't have a gluten-free kitchen. So there's still the danger. So here, there's no danger. And when they tell me that they have a gluten allergy or they're a celiac, I'm like, welcome home.
For Chicago Tonight, Black Voices, this is Erica Gunderson.
And Cheza's food truck is still on the road for catering. You can find more about that on our website. Summer in Chicago is when parks come alive with people enjoying the outdoors and especially playing sports. But in recent years, basketball nets and even some rims in some city parks have been removed, leaving kids who want to play without a shot. And Jamal Cole says that's not fair. Here he gives the last word on why he says bringing back basketball to parks will lead to a safer city.
My name is Jamal Cole. I'm the founder of My Block, My Hood, My City. We're a social impact organization, and our mission is to take care of people no matter what. I'm at Columbus Park because, it's summertime, and all over Chicago, we're starting to notice basketball rims being taken down. And more than that, we're starting to see anti-theft steering wheel locks put on basketball hoops, preventing kids from being able to shoot. Because I don't see y'all taking down the tennis nets. I don't see y'all taking down the volleyball nets. I don't see y'all taking down the soccer nets. But y'all putting steering wheel locks on basketball rims, that's not fair. And parks belong to everybody. How are you gonna find the next Isaiah Thomas or next Derrick Rose if you can't even play street ball, right? I love basketball. Basketball took me around the world. Like, I went to college, I got a business degree, but it all started on the streets playing basketball. The parks are an easy way for you to make friends. Playing basketball is a good way for you to build leadership, learn discipline, learn how to be on time. You get to meet your neighbors. You say, oh, I recognize who you were. You get to have small talk in the community, right? That's what the parks are for. Like, taking basketball rims down does not make your neighborhood safer, but putting them back up can be the start to building community. If the spaces are active, if the basketball rims are up, then 40 to 60 kids per day can be playing at those courts. That's keeping 40 to 60 kids out of gangs, out of trouble, out of breaking into your crib. That's giving them something to do, for real. We hear about all these carjackings going on. These kids are on the court. They're not breaking into cars. They're actually, and people like me can mentor them. While we're on the court, we can talk to them. We're doing something about it. We have a Save Street Ball initiative. We are raising money for new nets and new hoops all throughout Chicago. Let us know if you have a neighborhood park that needs a new rim or needs a new net. Donate to the initiative. We need y'all support to make it happen. We're gonna come work with your community, work with the park district, friends of the parks, a couple of your friends, a couple of my friends, anybody that wants to save street ball and just have a safe summer. If you see me out on the court in your neighborhood, come play 32 with me, come play 21. I want to get to know you. I love Chicago, right? And I love Chicagoans. That's what come holler at me.
And you can find more on Jamal Cole's Save Streetball initiative on our website. And that's our show tonight. Be sure to check out our website, WTTW.com/news, for the very latest from WTTW News. We leave you tonight with a performance from legendary singer and performer Tina Turner. The Queen of Rock and Roll died Wednesday at the age of 83. Turner performed on WTTW's soundstage program in 1983. Here she is singing River Deep, Mountain High. Now for all of us here at Chicago Tonight Black Voices, I'm Brandis Friedman. Stay healthy and safe, and have a good night.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, a proud sponsor of diversity, equity, and inclusion-focused free continuing legal education for lawyers throughout the region.